Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
What's going on, Fantasy Champs? Last second there, Rick. I switched the audio interface over to Zoom.
I noticed.
Could you hear the
yes
track right in the middle?
Yes.
Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. My name is Morgan Colby. I got Rick on the other screen. I don't know why I hesitated on that. I was like, screen. He's
he couldn't figure it out.
And today, I figured me and Rick were having this long discussion pre-podcast about the situation of fantasy football. And maybe we'll go into this in a second when we talk about what some people end up preaching, which is bust players and not bust players and different stuff like that. So maybe we'll go through that. But today, instead of doing the top busts at the running back position like we've done in years past, we're going to tell you the riskiest players at the running back position in the first, I want to say 3 rounds of the top 24 at the running back position. So guys that are getting drafted essentially in the top 24 at running back. Correct. We're going to talk about 3 guys in that top 24 that we think are the riskiest guys to be drafting. Not necessarily that you shouldn't, because there's a time and a place to draft them, but that they're going to be risky, and there's a lot of risk tied into them, and that you should watch out for that and don't overpay for a player that may end up hurting you in the long run. So before we do that, check out our website, fantasychampions.com. Follow us on any social media platforms. Just type the FF Champs in. We're also on TikTok, so be able to check that out. Not even though we haven't posted any videos.
Working on it.
If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or any other podcasting platforms, leave a review and then share this podcast with your friends. It's popping over there on Apple Podcasts, so just go, listen to it, leave a review, be super nice, be kind, unlike some people who comment on our YouTube videos. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, and then comment down below who you think the riskiest first round running back is, the guy that you're avoiding at all costs in the first round. Just leave that in the comments.
I'm ready to get this one going, bro.
I literally have a hair on my microphone, and I'm like, why is there hair in my mouth?
That's disgusting.
Yeah, so I fixed it. It was like a cat hair. My cat comes in here and rubs his head on my microphone, and then I'm like, what the frick is going on here?
That's gross, bro.
So let's talk about the riskiest running backs of the 2021 season, and we'll start this with a preface. In years past, we've done bust videos, and me and Rick were discussing before the show that personally, I've always felt that, more specifically over the last year or so, I've felt that every single player that you draft, you can draft at a specific value. So, for example, if you draft a guy in the first round with your top 6 pick and he ends up being an RB2 overall, then obviously that would be considered by most a bust. Last year, I drafted Miles Sanders with the 8th or 9th pick in the draft, and he ended up being a top 14, top 15 running back. So he burned me. People drafted Clyde as a top 5 running back last year.
Mistake.
And he ended up producing when he played the whole season, when he was playing, he produced as a top 12 running back. So still an RB1, but didn't provide the value back as the 5th player off the board or 6th player off the board. So the main point is, I feel like every player is draftable, except for the players I don't want to draft at all because I don't like them. Everyone's draftable at a certain value, right? Mm-hmm. There are guys like we mentioned before. I literally drafted Melvin Gordon in a draft on a mock draft a week ago, right? And Melvin Gordon gets drafted off the board, and you're thinking, well, this guy might be, a lot of people are projecting him to be a bust. But when you're talking about a guy between rounds 7 to 9, he would literally, in order to bust, he would literally have to underperform. What is he going off the board? Is it RB30? RB35?
Right. Yeah. Something like that. Like really loud.
That to me is very hard to do. And we were going to call this the bus show, as we said on Wednesday's show. And we did have Melvin Gordon on this list. But I feel like at his value right now, he is worth drafting because I think even if he produces that running back 30 like output, it's not what you wanted, and he's probably going to be cut. But like, he can't do any worse than that. So it's like everyone already thinks he's not going to be good because he's getting drafted at RB30 and Javonte's getting drafted 2 rounds earlier. So the point of this is that we're going to talk about, instead of talking about running backs that might bust on you, we're going to talk about running backs that are risky, that could bust on you, and then you're sitting there going, oh, man, I wish I didn't draft them. I wish I drafted somebody else.
Right.
I don't know if you had anything to add on that.
No, I mean, I think you pretty much touched on all the points that we wanted to talk about and explain. Because you're right. Like in fantasy, like Kenyon Drake last year, I think is another example of that, where he was a second round running back and he ended up producing as like a high end RB2 by the end of the season. But people still called him a bust, and it was like, was he really, or was it just where you drafted him? And I don't know. I think it's kind of just a messy situation. I think this is a better way of looking at it.
Yeah. I mean, being so, I hate to say it because you want to be definitive. You want to be like, okay, these are the players, because everyone wants to know who to draft and who not to draft.
Correct.
And I've had people literally ask me to draft their teams for them because they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And so they want some people might be listening to this podcast and they want, who should I draft? Who should I not draft? Who should I stay away from? Who's not going to be good? And I feel like if you're playing fantasy football, you got to play the whole thing. So you need to listen to our podcast and formulate, me and Rick sometimes have the same opinion. Sometimes we have a different opinion, whatever. Formulate your own opinion based on the information provided and make a decision. So if you know that these players are risky and you're drafting at 107 and you're like, okay, do I want to take this player? And then you look at all the risks and there's another player who might be slightly safer, then you take that player instead. So I feel like it's just, everyone paints fantasy football as black and white, and it's just not, because every draft is different.
Right.
Like last year, Jonathan Taylor was going in the 4th round, and I ended up getting him, 6th round, 7th round in our home league?
Yeah.
And it's a different league. Every mock I did, he was in the 4th round, and I was like, oh, I don't want to draft him. That's way too high. And then what did I ended up getting him in the 6th round because I was like, oh, the value's there. You know what I mean?
Right,
So anyway,
right.
Let's jump into the riskiest running backs of the 20. What we think in the first, I want to say 3 rounds.
24.
The top 24.
24 running backs, yeah.
Top 24 running backs off the board. The riskiest running backs in that grouping. So let's get into it. And the first guy, lo and behold, is Jonathan Taylor. Now, I have a list of risky running backs just in the first round alone of guys that scare the crap out of me. And Rick doesn't share the same sentiment, I think, with the other 2 guys, but we're not here to discuss that. So, we're going to talk about first Jonathan Taylor. He currently is going off the board, I believe. I'm going to pull up the ADP on Fantasy Pros as
it's pick 106, right?
6.7 is the average on
6th overall
platforms like Fantrax, Yahoo, Fantasy Football Championship. Say that again?
6th overall, essentially.
Yeah, 6th or 7th overall. So, for me, there's a lot of things with Jonathan Taylor. Now, we were talking about Jonathan Taylor, me and Rick, pre-shows on Monday when we were recording, and we discussed how Jonathan Taylor may not have Carson Wentz. He may not have, what's the guard's name?
Quentin Nelson.
Quentin Nelson, one of the best guards in the NFL, and a quarterback who's supposed to bring this new, fresh look to the offense for the Colts. You lose both of those players, and you have Jacob Eason and a downgraded offensive line. The offense isn't going to score a lot. All of that stuff kind of packs on behind Jonathan Taylor, and now people are still like, okay, Jonathan Taylor, we're going to draft him 106, we're going to draft him 107, but his offense sucks, and he has a bad offensive line, his schedule is not looking too hot, and you're going to expect Jonathan Taylor to have this great breakout, huge season as a top 6 or 7 running back. And I don't think he can return that value in that circumstance. Now, we got news before the show that Carson Wentz and Quentin Nelson will most likely be available, was the words I heard. I don't know if they're actually going to play. It's too far out from there. But that they will most likely be available for week 1, which is about 6 weeks or 5 weeks after the injury. So, and the time frame was so wide for the injury. It was like 5 to 12 weeks for both of them. And I was like, okay, so which one is it?
Right.
So anyway,
that's a huge injury.
Right. It's massive. So it's like you watch to see if they play or not. But that in and of itself is just a risk over to the left. But then you talk about how Jonathan Taylor had a really great end of the season last year. You know, he had a tough time getting started, and then when he finally got into it, he was fine. And he's talented, and everyone wants to talk about generational talent or not generational. I really don't care. He's a good running back. Like, don't sugarcoat it. Like, we don't need to play around.
Yeah.
But you look at the situation for Jonathan Taylor with the other elements of his offense, and they decide to go out and bring back, what's his name, Jordan Howard. That's not right. It's not Jordan Howard.
Marlon Mack.
Marlon Mack. Thank you.
But you pretty much Jordan Howard.
I went into the wrong player. But anyway, they bring back Marlon Mack. They have Nyheim Hines. They still have Jordan Wilkins. Jordan Wilkins?
Jordan Wilkins.
Yeah, thank you. I thought it was Wilkinson, and I got confused. So anyway, they still got those 4 running backs. Now, I don't even think they'll use Jordan Wilkins. I think it'll just be Nyheim Hines, Marlon Mack, and Jonathan Taylor. But that has been a risk there for me as well. They decided to bring back Marlon Mack, and now they're going to have a backfield that, and we already were complaining about how much Nyheim Hines was getting into the game. Now you're going to also have Marlon Mack, who's also they're going to want to get him into the game. And Frank Reich has for some reason, had a straight fetish with freaking Marlon Mack for whatever reason. So it's going to be Jonathan Taylor. You know, I'm not saying it's going to be a 3-headed monster there, but Jonathan Taylor will be the lead back. It's just, is he going to lose opportunity? And so there's another risk there. So not only do you have injury risk with some of the main components of the offense, but you also have other guys coming in behind Jonathan Taylor that may take work from him, which would lend to lead him in the opposite direction of being a top 6 running back. So those, I think, are the 2 main risks for me. But Rick, why don't you give your thoughts? Yeah,
I mean, we pretty much touched on that. I think Nyheim Hines played well enough last year where they're not going to just throw him away. He also had 63 catches, 76 targets. So, and now some of that was Phillip Rivers just dumping the ball off, but he will get involved in the passing game. He'll have a role in that offense.
Yeah.
It's going to be big enough where Jonathan Taylor isn't as good. No, I don't think it is. But it's a risk taking Jonathan Taylor at the 1-6 when there's a lot of running backs in that range that I think could have better seasons than Taylor, and maybe not even better seasons, but you feel like they're in more stable situations, right? Like, you know what Aaron Jones is going to do. You know what Nick Chubb is going to do. I think most people have an idea of Ezekiel Elliott, and I think his situation, because yes, Tony Pollard will be involved, but Zeke is still Zeke. With Taylor, you have Marlon Mack coming in. You have players battling injuries, his quarterback, his offensive line. Nyheim Hines is still there. Wilkins is still there. Like, there's just a lot of question marks with Taylor for a guy who's getting taken 6th overall because people believe in the talent. And I do too. I love Jonathan Taylor. I have him in a lot of dynasty leagues, thankfully. And I think he'll be good. It's just a matter of, which is why, again, I didn't want to call him a bust, because we were talking before the show and you were like, oh, what do you think of like Jonathan Taylor being a bust? And I was like, well, I think he's still going to be good. Like, he's going to be a good running back just by his talent alone, and the opportunities he's going to be given. And I don't think it's not like he's going to get under 190 carries. Like, he's going to be involved still. But is he going to be like the workhorse like some guys are in that range and that you're comfortable with taking with your 6th overall pick? I don't think so. I think he's going to be a little lower than that, maybe a tier below that.
Right.
So to take him at 6th, I think it's a little risky, because to me, that's pretty close to what his ceiling would be.
Right.
For this year with all those guys on the roster, it would be like RB5, RB6. That's kind of what you're really hoping for him to be. But there's a good chance he's like RB11, RB12, which is a good finish, but you're at the 6th overall pick.
You're ending up in the same situation you were last year with Clyde.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think it's definitely draft-wise the value thing for me. And, like, I would be willing to take that risk in the second round because I think he's on the risk level.
Yep. Even, like, top of the second round, I think is where.
Right. But, like, you look at some of these second-round running backs. And I look at Austin Eckler, Nadja Harris, Antonio Gibson, Joe Mixon, Clyde. Like, I look at some of these guys, maybe DeAndre Swift's in the end there. Like, I look at some of these guys and I go, okay, yeah, we could definitely see some risk there, and that's the reason why they're in that second round, right?
Yep.
Austin Eckler, new offensive system, don't know if they're going to use him the same way. Najee Harris, he's a rookie.
Right.
The bad offensive line, not an easy schedule. Like, it's going to be interesting for him. Antonio Gibson has been dealing with some injury stuff. He's got questions there. Joe Mixon's been a breakout running back for 7 years in a row now. So, you know what I mean? Yep. Like, I just look at all of these players and they have some questions around them. And sure, some of them can break out. Sure, some of them probably will stay exactly where they are, maybe just produce at that RB 14, 15 value, and then some of them will just bust out the wall. But, like, I look at Jonathan Taylor, and he has those same risks as those guys, so I feel like he should be in that range, and people are drafting him as the top 6 running back. So that's the biggest risk that you run, is that all these risks are here, and then you're taking him in the first round over running backs that are probably safer bets, like Ezekiel Elliott, for example.
Correct. Or even like a Nick Chubb or Aaron Jones. Those guys are just, they're going to be staple players for you.
Right. And I think when you're talking about first-round picks, like, I'm all for taking risks in the second, third round, but, like, if you're in the first round and you're trying to establish your roster with that first main player, taking guys like Nick Chubb, Aaron Jones, who's the other player you mentioned?
Eckler, I think you said.
No, Aaron Jones, Nick Chubb,
Zeke.
and Zeke, yeah. And put those guys into that conversation. I believe Zeke is now getting taken ahead of Jonathan Taylor, which is probably a good sign. But anyway. So, yeah, I just think that the risks outweigh the reward that you get at that position. And so I know we spent 15 minutes on Jonathan Taylor. But, yeah, I think you just got to watch out for Jonathan Taylor and the situations that he brings. You ready to move on to the next guy, Rick?
Yeah.
Number 2, Daryl Henderson, take it away.
Yeah, you wanted me to talk about this one.
Yeah, because you're sweaty about this.
I am sweaty about this.
I'm not indifferent. I do agree that there's, like, a lot of, like, risks around him.
I'm rolling up the sleeve with this one. He's an RB21 right now. Okay. So you're drafting him as a definitive RB2 for your team, and you're probably taking him in the third or fourth round. I think people just see the Cam Akers news, obviously, and then they're like, okay, Daryl Henderson's going to play like Cam Akers. He's going to jump in that role. That's not going to happen. Look at last year. Malcolm Brown was the starter at first. Then they went to Daryl Henderson. Then they went back to Malcolm Brown. Then they went back to Daryl Henderson. And then Cam Akers, they gave him a chance, the rookie, and he took off with it. And they're like, okay, this is our guy. We drafted him to be the guy. Daryl Henderson, I'm not going to say they already gave up on him because, they didn't. But I don't think they have Daryl Henderson on the roster with the view of him being the guy, right? So what they're going to do most likely is go back to that Sean McVay style and run multiple running backs. Everything you've seen from training camp, Xavier Jones looks like he's impressed, at least from what they've said. To a lesser degree, a guy named Jake Funk, who I've never heard of. Apparently he's playing well, but I think it'll be more the Xavier Jones and Daryl Henderson. And look, Henderson will have good games when they ride the hot hand, just like he did last year, and people will get hyped about it. And then all of a sudden, Xavier Jones will get 20 carries for 105 yards, and everybody's going to go bananas. It's just, I think it's not wise to take Henderson as high as he's going. I mean, I've seen Henderson go ahead of, like, Josh Jacobs, David Montgomery, Chris Carson in that range. He's going ahead of Myles Gaskin right now, who I think is a little more stable. Even like Kareem Hunt. And now the running backs, the lower you get, it starts to get more of a crapshoot. But I would still take a lot of guys over Henderson, in my opinion. But even ignoring that, if we're just talking about the risk factor, there's so many risks. Daryl Henderson has never been the full running back on that team for a full season, or never been the guy on that team for a full season. We don't know how they're going to use the offense. I think it's going to be what I said, where they use multiple guys, but we really don't know. There's just a lot of question marks for a guy that you're taking in, like, the late third, early fourth round. Like, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think there's this circumstantial like reality with Daryl Henderson where there was just a reaction
Yep.
to the injury of Cam Akers. And I was even like, see, I would say for Cam Akers, I was excited to see him play. And after seeing how they were utilizing him at the end of the season and in the playoffs, I was like, oh my God, this guy's going to be legit. And you get excited. And I was literally, at first I was like, nah, I don't really want this. And then I was like, okay, Cam Akers in the 3rd round, I can do that. Or maybe second. Was he early second? I think at one point.
Cam Akers?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was early second. He was like RB13.
Everyone was all excited about Cam Akers. And this would be, to me, akin to if Dalvin Cook were to get hurt and you had to switch to Alexander Mattison.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
Mattison is not as good a running back as Dalvin Cook. Would he get a lot of work? Yes. Would he be good with it? I don't know. He's still a backup running back in the NFL.
So you see, even that I think is different though.
Yeah.
When I think about it, because
I was going to bring up Tony Pollard, but I actually like him. If Zeke disappears.
I mean, Madison I think is okay too, but like in the Vikings offense, they just want to give it to a guy and just pound it. The Rams offense to me is not like that, especially now with Stafford there. Like they're going to throw the ball.
Yeah.
They're going to do end arounds. They're going to do all these crazy things, and yes, they are going to pound the football. But it feels like it's going to be running back by committee there, and it's not going to be just Henderson.
Yeah.
And I think, he'll be good enough to the point where it's not a bad pick, but in that range it will be.
Right. I agree.
I think he should be going where he was going, which was last month. Or not last month. When Akers initially got hurt, I saw him going in like the late 5th, 6th, more of like a 6th round pick, and I was much more comfortable with that.
Yeah, and he's just skyrocketed up boards because people.
Right.
I remember when we first had that conversation of like, oh, maybe Daryl Henderson's a good pick, and then we looked at his ADP and it was like 4th round. I was like, okay, all right, never mind. So anyway. There have been reports, too, from a lot of different individuals that they're going to deploy a backfield committee of sorts to alleviate Daryl Henderson of a full workload. So they don't want to send Daryl Henderson out there and give him the Cam Akers workload that they projected for him. They want to send Daryl Henderson out there and probably give him the first 2 downs and then bring out somebody on 3rd down and then maybe pull him out of the game in passing situations for somebody else. I don't know. But they clearly, from the things that I've heard from camp, is that they don't really want to give Daryl Henderson a full workload.
Which is like, if you've just been following the Rams the last 12 months, it makes sense. The only guy who they were willing to do that was with Cam Akers. Because that's what they drafted him as. I
think, are you going to give, because Daryl Henderson's the starter there, are you going to give Daryl Henderson 200 plus carries and probably like 30, 40 targets? Yeah. And
see, even then, I don't even know.
I really do. I mean, I don't think they're going to give him to anyone else. I mean, they're backup running.
No, that's true. I'm not saying like what did he last year? He had 138 carries.
Yeah.
He'll get more than that.
I think he's going to be around 200 carries.
I think he gets a little under that, like 190, 180. But yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. So, I think for me, like you're right though. Even if he gets the 200 carries that I was just saying, and he catches 30 passes, right? That's 230 touches, and he's not even that efficient of a running back. So it's like you talk about the efficiency at the running back position, and you talk about what he can do. I feel like even with 230 carries, he would be just under like 170, 180 fantasy points.
And so 230 touches
on 200. Say it again.
230 touches. You said 230 carries.
Yeah, no, 230 touches is what I meant to say. So, but I think the value that you're running out and putting on Daryl Henderson, when there's a really good chance that it's a similar system that they had last year, where guys like Xavier Jones and who's the other guy there? I can't even remember what his name is.
Jake Funk, I think.
Jake Funk. Yeah, I don't think he's going to get much involved, but I think they'll also bring somebody in because you do have Le'Veon Bell.
And that was another possibility.
And there's going to be running backs that get cut like right before the season starts that'll get picked up. So I just think for Daryl Henderson right now, if you guys are drafting in the middle of August and you're going out and you're drafting Daryl Henderson with a 4th, 5th round pick when we don't even know what the backfield's going to look like in 3 weeks, I feel like you have to take your time. And this is probably one of the riskiest picks in the top 24 because you have absolutely no idea this backfield's going to do.
Yeah, I do think the Rams will most likely pick someone up. I think that's a high possibility. And even if it's just like a depth guy,
yeah,
but someone who will, like Carlos Hyde type of player. I'm not saying Carlos Hyde, but a player like that who's just going to come in and get like 5-10 carries like he did on the Seahawks last year. That just will affect Daryl Henderson. I think that's a very high possibility.
Yeah. All right, you ready to talk about the next guy?
One quick thing, I'll just say again on Daryl Henderson because I can talk about this dude forever. He what I was saying about like the inconsistency after week 7. So he was like he had 3 carries in week 1 and then 12, 20, and it was like, oh, this is the Daryl Henderson show, and he was the starter for a few weeks, and then all of a sudden he wasn't 8, 7, 8, 10, and then they slowly were moving him away from the offense, and then he had 3, 2, and 1 for carries, and then he had 12 in a game where I think Malcolm Brown got injured, and then he also got injured in that game. So Daryl Henderson was just so inconsistent last year with his carries. I think it's going to be a little more consistent, but it's going to be something like that.
Yeah, I agree. Let's talk about the final guy and get the show concluded.
Okay, well now this is your guy, so.
All right, so I'll start this time. I let you talk that whole time and feel proud of myself. Because I usually just ramble on. If you made it this far in the show, you've been waiting for me to like say I talk too much. There it is. So yeah, third guy, Miles Sanders. This is Rick and I were talking on Monday, and we were like, "Oh, this is like a full 180." Or 3. No, it's not 360. It's 180. Yeah, that's right. Because last year we had him on a breakout list, and we thought he was going to be real. I honestly, if you asked me last August where I would be right now, you would probably celebrating my fantasy championship with Miles Sanders in Miami would be one of the things that I thought about.
Yeah, is that what you were gonna do?
No, but if you asked me where I thought Miles Sanders would be right now, I would say he would be a top 5 running back going off the board. Clearly, that did not happen, and now he's a third round running back. Now, I love Miles Sanders. I love the talent of Miles Sanders. If Miles Sanders was in a system right now that was going to give him a full complement of work with 250 plus carries and 50 catches and all of that, I would feel 100% safer with Miles Sanders. I would be like, get me Miles Sanders in every single fantasy team I have. Every single one.
Yeah.
There's big problems here. And Miles Sanders presents a crap load of risk. Because not only do I not think with this new system is he going to get 250 to 300 touches, but they also proceeded to bring back Jordan Howard. They drafted Kenneth Gainwell. They still have Boston Scott, and they got off the waiver wire Kerryon Johnson. There is 5 running backs in that backfield right now. Are they all going to make the team?
Dude.
Probably not. But the fact that they felt they needed to go and draft a running back in the 4th round and re-sign Jordan Howard is a really strong sign that the Eagles are going to go RBBC this year. And if that is the case, a guy like Miles Sanders presents a massive risk in the 3rd round. Massive. Like, I know there's not a lot of options at running back at that point, and this is why if you're a middle...
Especially after him.
If you're a middle first round... I mean, if you're in the middle of the 1st round, draft a running back in the 1st round, draft a running back in the 2nd round, and then focus on wide receiver until, like, you get to Javonte Williams.
Yep.
Seriously. Like, it's as freaking simple as that. Like... If you're drafting Miles Sanders in the 3rd round expecting some kind of breakout out of him or expecting some kind of big season out of him, I would hold my horses on that. And we're also, I want to look up to see what we've been hearing out of camp for Miles Sanders because
I was going to say there's ESPN had like position battles to watch, and one of the positions they listed was Philadelphia Eagles running backs as a position battle.
Yeah.
So that's great. Which includes Miles Sanders in those. But yeah, dude, 5 running backs on the team. They're obviously not going to keep all 5. I think Howard.
What did you just say about that last report? I missed that. I'm sorry. I was reading a text.
ESPN just did a like position battles to watch, and on the list was Philadelphia Eagles running backs. So they consider that like a position battle, which is not great for Sanders.
I also just saw a beat reporter, a beat writer for the Philadelphia Eagles said on, I think it was the 4th, that Miles Sanders and Boston Scott are two basically split touches this season. Yeah, this is
that's unfortunate.
And then the Eagles running back coach Jamel Singleton downplayed the idea of an every down role for Miles Sanders. So
that's
everything
encouraging.
There's when you hear coach speak about Chase Edmonds in Arizona, who also I do not like, by the way. We'll throw him on the risky show. I'm not going to talk about him, but when you see that situation where they're like, "Oh, we really love Chase Edmonds," and you have a coach who has historically said, "Well, we really love this guy," and then gone in the other direction because that's what he does, and then they bring in James Conner. Like like when I look at that situation, I'm like, okay, maybe Coach Speak is getting into the. When you see multiple reports and multiple coaches saying that they're not going to give they're not going to give Miles Sanders a full complement of work, that's concerning. And I don't think this offense is going to run the ball 400 times, because you could split carries, run it 400 times, and have Miles Sanders at 220 and the other guy at 180. Which is a good number for Miles Sanders. That's what who is it? That's what the Saints did with Kamara and Ingram. 180 carries for Alvin Kamara, 200 plus for Mark Ingram. Like it's possible. Do I think the Eagles are going to do that? No. So
definitely not.
There you go. This is not going to be an Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram situation. And so I think you need to tread very light. Like this is probably the closest that you're going to get to a bust player in the first 3 rounds or in the top 24 that you can get.
Which is the complete 180 of last year.
Right.
And
like I said, nothing to do with his talent, nothing to do with his ability, has everything to do with the new coaching system that they have and the fact that everyone's talking about Boston Scott and him splitting reps. Now, maybe they're just BSing it and they're going to give Miles Sanders every single work. But why would they lie about it? That's kind of where I'm like, like if they were going to split snaps, it would be more beneficial for them to come out and say, you know what, we're going to give Miles Sanders every single carry and then go out and split it. That would make more sense if they were trying to screw somebody up.
That's true.
Like, why tell everyone now that you're going to split carries and then give Miles Sanders the full work? Like,
there's still a part of me that likes Miles Sanders though, because I do like the talent. And like even last year, when Jalen Hurts was the starter, so in those 3 games, he was on pace for like 16 rushing touchdowns, 1,200 rushing yards, 50 receiving or 50 catches. Like he was on pace for an awesome year. And last year, one of the biggest things was just injuries for Miles Sanders, as well as Carson Wentz missing him on every throw and him dropping a lot of passes.
Yeah. That's the other thing I was going to say is he was disappointing in the passing game last year.
Yeah, right. And he has big play potential. Like there's a lot of things to like about Sanders. And if they use him in a workhorse role, then I think he'll be great. The problem is you're drafting him kind of hoping for that. Right. And there's, I think, just as equally as good of a chance that he's going to split with either Boston Scott or even if it's not a split, something close to a split. And they also use Kerryon Johnson and Kenneth Gainwell. Like it's just, it's a lot. It's a lot for Philly in that backfield.
Yeah. I very much so agree. And I think it's just going to be, I love Miles Sanders. So this is a hard one for me, but
I know this is your guy.
Yeah.
This time last year you wanted his jersey.
This is why I'm talking, like what did you say?
I said this time last year you wanted his jersey.
Yeah, I know I did. I got A.J. Brown instead, so I'm good. But I think for Miles Sanders too, this goes back to the discussion that, like for me, if he was in the 5th or 6th round, this would be an entirely different conversation for me. This would be this is a steal right here. The guy's probably going to lead the backfield and work, and he'll be a decent at least flex option this year. But everyone and that's kind of what is scary about it, is that I think he is at best a flex option this year. And if you throw, I know I don't want to say that, but if they really are splitting snaps with Boston Scott,
if they are splitting snaps, and that's the best you can hope for, really, is the flex option.
Yeah, and like you can stick them in your flex week to week and get 8, 9, 10 fantasy points out of them in a standard league or in a half PPR league, hopefully 12 to 15. But like it ends up being a really bad situation for Miles Sanders, and I think we'll see. Maybe they are BSing us. Maybe he does go out and have a really great season, but I really don't think, seeing what they're saying in camp. Like that's the thing. Like I always say with coach speak, actions speak louder than words. And if a coaching staff is saying one thing, what are their actions doing? A coaching staff has said we're going to split the snaps, and then they sign Jordan Howard. They bring in Kenneth Gainwell. They bring off the waivers Kerryon Johnson. Like those are actions that they're taking to say we're going RBBC.
Yep.
So if you're like, oh my God, I disagree, get heated in the comments, and I'm just telling you right now, this is what the team is saying.
I hope they don't. I hope Sanders is the guy, and he finally shows that he can be the guy. But
right,
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. So there you got it. We have, or there you have it. Not there you got it, because I don't know if there you got it makes sense. But there's Jonathan Taylor, Daryl Henderson, Miles Sanders as the 3 riskiest running backs in the top 24. This is extremely interesting strategy to go through. So we're going to talk about riskiest wide receivers and quarterbacks in the coming weeks. I kind of like this risky thing. So we'll see you Tuesday, guys.
All right, see you guys later.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube, and follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps.